From the basement of the Hopheads Guide to the Galaxy world headquarters located in northern Colorado, this is the Hopheads Guide podcast. I'm Matt Reed.
I'm Brown Jake. If you cut a tree down in the woods, well, singing to it will become an awesome beer. We answer that question and more on this episode of the Hopheads Guide podcast.
Hey there, Hopheads and Beer Geeks. Welcome to another episode of the Hopheads Guide podcast brought to you by Beerds by Nick. With me, as always, is the man who's responsible for all of the Colorado Bigfoot sightings, Jake, the brown guy.
Actually, that's bullshit. I was out of town. I have an alibi for one. I was totally serious.
Well, I mentioned Bigfoot sightings because our interview tonight was from Washington, where most of the Bigfoot sightings have occurred over the years.
Yeah.
So we had the privilege of interviewing.
You question yourself on that one.
We had the privilege of interviewing Mike, owner, brewer, CEO, all-around
Fabricator
guy from the Hidden Mother Brewing. Hidden Mother is in Spokane, Washington, and they brew some unique beers. Let's just put it that way. And honestly, Mike is a very unique guy. It was a awesome interview.
I had my Hidden Mother notes because when you're like, oh, he's going to be on the show, guess what I did? Started writing down some notes for questions that I never asked him because he kind of just answered them.
His interview just went AWOL.
Oh, dude, it was like, and I thought we were going to put him in the hop seat, so I had a whole bunch of like
Well, I wanted to, but then it went AWOL on me. He would have been a great hop seat one guy.
No, I think he would have put us in the hop seat.
We had such a good time. I got to hang out with him most of the day that day, and then I got to hang out with him prior to that while we did when I covered the Collaboration Fest beer with Woods Boss, Hidden Mother, and
Jagged Mountain.
Jagged Mountain, yeah. And that was a good time alone. But I mean, Mike he's a character, dude.
Oh yeah,
he's a lot of fun, and the beers that they brew fit his personality so well.
Oh, 100%. After you get to talking to him, what I did for the interview is when you told me he was going to be on, I started doing some research just behind, Hidden Mother and him, and just reading about him does not even break the surface of what he's actually doing.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of funny. You read different articles about how he started and what he was doing before he started doing Hidden Mother, but then like you meet him and you're like, holy shit, did these people actually interview you, or was it kind of like word of mouth? Because if I was a journalist, this whole article would have just been about you.
Right. Man, I had such a good time hanging out with him that day, and you never know what direction he's going to go. I mean, when you think he's going to zig, he's going to zag.
Oh, yeah.
And that tells a lot about the personality of the brewery and his personality. Hidden Mother is basically a farm that he has turned into a brewery.
Yes.
And it's unique. The beers are unique. I wish that he was able to bring some of the beers so we could have actually tried them. But we were lucky enough to get to try them at Collaboration Fest. And they definitely were some of the most unique beers there.
Yeah, they were really different by the way that they got brewed, and he'll tell you about that in an interview. So I thought it was really interesting. His whole concept of brewing, like, you think that he's like this evil genius,
yeah,
that he has everything planned out for like seriously. When I first started talking to him, I was like, man, if I played a game of chess against this guy would kick my ass.
Right.
But then after talking to him for a little while, the game of chess would probably turn into checkers. Because it would be totally thrown off. Like, it would, that's how.
No, that's exactly right.
That's
like,
how the interview was going. It was just,
you're playing chess and he's playing dominoes.
Yeah. And yeah, that's the whole thing. And you're gonna listen to it. He's a great guy. We saw him back, the next day at Collaboration Fest, and he was all like, "Yeah, buddies," and he drove down with us, and it was just a riot, just to hear his stories and just hear him talk. And it's one of those that I hope we keep in contact with.
Yeah, because I want to go hang out, camp out on the farm, and get to try some of the beers.
Dude, we need to put some miles on your Jeep. Might as well just drive up there.
Let's do it, man. Yeah, the Jeep needs some miles on it for sure. All right, well, without further ado, here is our interview with Mike Detar from Hidden Mother Brewing in Spokane, Washington.
You can call me stupid. Yes, you can call me sheep. You can say I'm lazy. You can say I'm weak. But when it comes to her, you better keep it sealed. Don't you dare say a single word, or I will strike you where it feels. You think that using her will get to me, and if you're right, then you're in trouble deep. 'Cause I won't break, no, I know I won't wait. You're in trouble deep. I don't wanna hear no more. There are certain things I won't ignore. I really think you need to go before I kick you out the door. I kick you out the door.
Well, before we get this kicked in, cheers, boys.
Cheers.
Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for joining us, man. I'm so
so
glad you were able to join us. When I met you at Woods Boss, I even texted Jake. I was like, I got to get this guy on the podcast because you were just a ball of energy. I mean, you were just all over the place, and it wasn't even your brewery. You just clearly made yourself at home.
I was fucking hammered that day. Like, I wasn't even trying to figure out what was going on.
It was just like you were just kind of all over the place, and it seemed like there was one brewer that was doing all of the work.
Yeah, it was all Ryan.
Yeah, like he was doing all of the work. But Mike was pitching in and trying to get stuff done, because really you were the only one that knew what the hell was trying to happen.
It's really funny when you look at it, though. I wouldn't even go that far, but it was nice to be in there and everyone thought that.
Well, just to fill in the story a little bit, you were there to brew a collaboration beer with Woods Boss that is basically along the lines of a beer that you've brewed, dozens of times?
The amount of tree beers I've done, I used 3 different varieties of trees that I've built recipes off of, and I've done different variations, and sort of the start to finish from home brewing to commercial, it changed drastically as I went along those lines. So what we did with Woods Boss, going there, it was a method that I found to be really successful, and everyone that we worked with down here wanted to jump on the style because it's just a really cool style.
Well, we have a lot of spruce trees, so why wouldn't we?
And we use Ponderosa pine on this one. And it's a little more pitched, so you just got to run through faster.
Yeah.
Excuse me. yeah, just a really cool process. But it's really funny because in those types of situations, you're dealing with something where there's not someone that you can pick up your phone and give them a call and be like, "Hey, what am I doing wrong here? What do I need to adjust and what do I need to fix on this?" You can't really do that because there's really not that many people who do these types of beers. So the fact that like we're kind of getting branded as sort of like a semi-pioneer in this style of beer, it's pretty funny to me.
Right. Yeah.
But it's also awesome. Like, so in those situations, yeah, you got your Ryan who's busting out and doing all the work, and he's doing everything that creates that beer. And what it really does is, sweet, you have an idea that fed into the project that you're doing at that point. You have a guy who's probably working his ass off harder than everyone else. But in 10 years, watch what that guy's doing, because every single one of these things is going to motivate some weird project that he's going to do in 14 years.
Yeah, he's going to take every
Or
technique.
5. Like, it's, and I love it because there's so much of an experimental, I guess, mentality towards it, and such a just an organic growth with how to do these things that I just love to see it happening in more places than ours.
Right, right. And it's not going to hurt your feelings if all of a sudden Woods Boss decides, hey, we want to have a tree beer that we keep on tap
Oh, no way.
on a regular basis.
Are you kidding?
It's not going to be like they're going to get a cease and desist letter in the mail, like,
Those are my trees.
yeah, written with a crown that says, Mike doesn't like what you're doing right now.
Well, for Woods Boss, they might get that, but any other brewery, no. Fuck Jordan. Those guys are awesome.
Yeah, that was, I'd covered a lot of...
I might send a season desist
Just as a joke.
just for shits and giggles.
with a couple T-shirts.
There are a great group of guys, and it's, it was such a crazy thing to go and see because I'd been covering a lot of those collaboration beers, and that was the first one where it really felt like a collaboration. Like everybody was giving little bits of input, and nothing at all got rejected. It was like, well, how about we do it this way? Yep, let's do it that way. There was no conversation about it. There was no,
Let's go for
well, let's consult Mike first. It was, yep,
Well,
that's what we're
it's
going to
really
do.
fun.
you know?
I mean, all this spawned off of when we as a brewery were down here for GABF. We came down and we hit Jagged Mountain, and we were drinking at Jagged Mountain, and they had a Japanese saison on. And I was like, man, this is amazing. And I reached out to them, like I just left sort of a message at that point, and they shot back to us, and all this is basically because Jagged Mountain made it happen, and it just kind of evolved from there.
Yeah.
And it's funny because like when you look at the collaboration aspects of it, I think if you're really going to do a collaboration correctly, you really do have to let go of all the things that you personally are like really wanting to hang on to and really go into an experimental mentality.
Yeah.
You can't be reckless, but just have fun with it. Like you're dealing
Right.
with people that are in the industry, and everyone should, if you're going to do a collaboration with them, they should have the base of what it takes to make a good beer and go from there.
Yeah.
So it was really, really interesting, I guess, dynamics on that particular beer, because it was like 3 breweries that were just throwing things at each other, and
Yeah.
they took the tree idea from us. Jagged Mountain brought in the Kvik idea. Or sorry, Woods Boss did. I mean, it was like all of them. It was just a really cool step-by-step process.
Yeah. Which, really is what collaborations are all about. So
For sure.
So talk to us a little bit about your brewery. You guys have been open for a year officially now, right?
Yep.
You had your
We're-
anniversary in February?
Well, our first sale was March 30th.
Okay.
So
you're not quite there yet to your official year.
wow, I guess that's totally
Got
the
really
case.
deep
I
on
just
that one.
bursted his bubble. He was like, well,
I mean, it feels like 40 years, so I don't know what to say.
Because it was a long road to get there.
Yeah, I mean, our project is pretty unconventional in that sense. I sold my house and I built all the equipment. Me and a buddy, Bobby, God rest his soul, he's gone now.
Oh,
but he and I
sorry.
came up with all of the design and welded everything out, rolled everything out, and basically came up with all the concept from start to finish. And yeah. Like
So you really are a mad scientist.
Yeah, I mean, this is.
I thought you were just mad, but you're an actual mad scientist.
Oh, this is a 4-year project. Basically, built the system, and then last year built the structure with a 23-year-old kid, just framed in the side of a barn. Like we literally created a brewery in the smallest space. That's the most efficient thing I've seen. I don't know. It's pretty
amazing.
cool.
Yeah.
And really sticking to. I mean, we have a huge expansion happening now, but we're gonna keep that for all spontaneous fermentation.
Great. That's awesome. And so you just finished up converting to or adding 60-barrel fermenters.
We're in the process of that right now.
You got slowed down from the shutdown. I'm
Yeah,
assuming.
the government shut down. I'm not going to go political at all. No cuss words.
Okay.
I'm not a huge fan.
You can
of,
use them if you like.
Fuck Trump.
You're allowed to have whatever opinion you want in this house.
I got lots of opinions. That's one of them. Yeah, that froze us up. That backed us up about 3 months on the expansion and the tanks coming in and kind of the ability. We bought a 15-barrel system with a Whirlpool from Everybody's Brewing over in White Salmon, which is just across the river from Freem Brewing up in Hood River.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had that in storage for like 8 months. And we got that and locked into this lease and put the down payment on a bunch of tanks. And then the government shutdown happened, which backlogged the TTB, which meant we couldn't get approved for our building, which meant we had to hold off on getting a loan, which was shut down also, so we couldn't really do anything with that anyways.
Right.
But had we gotten the loan and gotten the tanks in, we couldn't produce into it. Like it turned into a full circle of a nightmare.
A giant circus, basically.
Yep.
Yeah.
So instead, we flew down to Heretic Brewing and made a beer called the Mouse Circus because the Mouse Circus is way better.
And it seems appropriate as well.
It was like, well, whatever. If we can't do this, we'll do something else crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. It seemed like the easiest way to approach it.
Yeah. So with this expansion that you're doing, you're doing a lot of spontaneously fermented beers. What's the plan with this? What's the angle, I guess?
So initially when I built the system and the vision that I had with building the system itself, it's totally crazy and delusional. But I built a system where we could fill 2 wine barrels at a time with enough unfermented liquid to dump on the top and top barrels off while you're barrel fermenting and go 100% barrel fermented. And the only reason that's delusional at this point is because we kicked off without a tap room, and we went into the distribution game with a 6-barrel system. Which is like, how stupid can this person possibly be?
And also made a beer that people really want to drink.
Well, multiple. We took gold and silver at the Washington Beer Awards, which was 4th overall in the state of Washington. At this point, we're running at capacity, which is great, but when you look at the logistics of that, it's not really that reasonable. Just because you're doing all that doesn't mean that you're like sustaining the company that you really need to sustain.
Right.
And the full intention at this point with the company is to go employee owned, and we have people that are really invested in working in this company. And to me, I want to disappear from the idea of being always in the background doing all this stuff, and just go to working with barrels
Yeah.
constantly. And I think going to employee owned is the easiest way to do that.
So let the employees run it, and you just
Yeah.
do your thing.
Just run with it.
yeah. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Taking the title, I'm only the brewer. Like some brewers want to take.
Like, why did I start this? And then you go back to that and really realize why you did.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
at that point, it just becomes a fine line of delegating things to the right person and
sure.
and making sure that things are getting done that
Which
need to
is
get done.
a lot more difficult than it sounds.
I just said it. It sounds pretty easy to me.
Well, I mean, once going to that, I got, Remington, the guy that,
Yeah, that was at a
He-
Woods
he-
Boss with you. Yeah,
yeah, he and I are the brewers, and I have no problem pushing something onto him because I trust everything he's doing. But
right.
when you take a brand that you're blasting out, and like if you look at sort of the projection that I'm trying to do, and you're looking at 4 states in a year, you're really throwing a lot of things to the wind without a perfect calculation if it's not done totally right with the right people.
Right.
Yeah.
So
So
how many states are you selling your beer in now?
currently 2.
2.
Yep.
Washington and Oregon?
Idaho.
Idaho.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So, but you're planning on expanding that with the
Yep.
with the expansion.
With the 60s, yeah.
Nice.
Looking at getting a canning line and all that.
Are you going to be adding a tap room?
Yep.
Cool.
Finally. It's not really the focus, but when you look at the money that comes in on a tap room, it you got $850 in profit compared to 40
Right.
compared to wholesale.
Plus, I mean, from what I've heard in other interviews and from what I've heard you talk about is really your brewery and the farm that it's built on is something to see.
Yeah,
I mean, it's something people are going to want to come and see, right? I mean,
well, it's a totally crazy place. Yeah,
it seemed appropriate.
It's
Perfectly sane.
Well, it's so rare to walk into a place and be hanging out with someone that literally built 100% of everything that's in there.
Yeah,
and outside of the fermenters, I didn't do the cones on the conical fermenters. But when you look at that stuff, there's just something so organic about how we're doing things, and the fact that we're working on spontaneous beers and full estate beers and really going for that. There's just something really unique with that flavor. Like it's what gets us in the same conversation with some of the most respected breweries in the States, and it's strictly because we're going so far outside the box that I guess people are really intrigued always, and we really do keep that focus of beer first rather than some sort of like marketing campaign that it's like, cool, buy this because we did this process, check it out, it's awesome. No, it's taste this beer, and if you love it, jump on it. This is what we do, and this is the world we live in. The crazy things that we bring to it really come because we both, Remington and I, have backgrounds in culinary arts.
Okay.
And it influenced kind of the direction we went with it.
Explain to me this idea of an estate beer.
So an estate beer is everything from the ground up without purchasing anything outside.
Which essentially, to this point, is what you've done. I mean, you've built
working on
every piece of the built every piece of the brewery.
Well, I guess
I mean,
to clarify a little more, not machinery or tanks, ingredients.
Okay.
So
okay.
when you look at beer, you got water, yeast, grain, and hops. And when you're looking at spontaneous beers, you really don't need that many hops anyways, but you're really working off the yeast aspect. But a lot of people don't malt. There's one brewery in the States that I know of that is not a macro brewery, so not Anheuser-Busch, that malts their own malt and creates a full estate beer.
Right, yeah. So are you going to have a malting facility there, or do you already have that?
I really want to start floor malting. I kind of put a 6-year plan on this.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's your question?
Every single time I say these things, everyone says you're insane.
And you say, yeah.
They could be right, they could be wrong. But even this project from the get-go, yeah, I'm going to sell my house and I'm going to build a brewery.
Which is essentially what you did. You were living in California and you sold your house and decided to build a brewery.
Everyone's like, you're insane, dude. Don't do this.
I mean, when did this, was this like an evolution where you're like, man, this would be a really cool dream of me selling my house and moving to Washington to open this brewery? Or was it you just woke up one morning, you know what, fuck this house, I'm out of here?
Or hanging out with
I was in a bakery for 12 years and loved the cultivation of yeast, but I like beer more than bread.
Right, because beer at least gets you drunk.
Yeah, I know. Sometimes it gets you hammered.
Sometimes.
Sometimes, most of the time. If you do it right.
99% of the time, it works every time.
Yeah. At least. Now you got me thinking.
We don't do math on this show. It's fine.
Let's pound these.
I'm down, dude. I'm down. I need to catch up to where you're at right now, which I know I'm not going to do since you hung out with Peter Boucard all day long. But
yeah, that was kind of ridiculous. He's I like that guy a lot.
He's a great guy. There's nothing not to like about him.
Something about that guy that's like, man, is irrational and insane as all of it sounds. I'm pretty dead set on the idea of floor malting, which is not the most efficient, but most of the malts that we use at our brewery are floor malted over in Europe. And yeah, you don't grab the same efficiency out of something that's been malted here, that's run through a kiln,
right?
But the flavor profiles are amazing.
Yeah,
and I kind of
is floor malting it's essentially just dried, like laid out on a floor?
Well, it's laid out, and there's liquid that's like, it's basically under the level of the floor.
Okay.
With water in there until you basically sprout the malt. And
okay.
everything's done.
All right. All right.
It's a less efficient way of doing everything, but it's awesome. And totally inefficient. So
Two things you love.
So I support it. Awesome and efficient, and I guess I still support it.
But you're also growing hops as well. You've already started growing hops.
Yeah, at this point we have 2,500 hop plants in the ground.
How many different varieties have you got?
4.
4 different. Okay.
Yep. Got Mount Hoods, Cascade, Centennial, Chinook. I guess we got some Columbus too.
Okay.
So 5.
And you're in the homeland or the mecca of growing hops anyway. So
yeah, we're dealing with, and the people I deal with are the top in the hop world.
Right.
The ones I deal with the most are Carpenter Ranches, and they're part of the whole HBC group. They do all the experimental hops. These are the guys who came up with Citra, Simcoe, Mosaic, Warrior, Amarillo, and these guys are the top to deal with.
Yeah, yeah.
We're doing the whole HBC research program right now, where we're getting all the number hops off the experimental yard and building recipes that work with the hops that they developed. So they basically pioneer the hop itself. We pioneer the recipes that work really well with it and send back cans for them to test and check out and do all the testing on, to see everything from utilization of the alpha acids to the flavor profiles that come out. And yeah, we're having a lot of fun with that program right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are there certain criteria that they expect you to brew by, or you just kind of do your thing and you let them know like what conditions the hops were used under? I'm
kind of one of those assholes that will like try to figure out what it is that you're not supposed to do.
I gotcha.
So like, the first thing I got when I got selected for this, and it's really hard to get in this group. First thing was a phone call, and it's like, how pissed would you guys be if I did a fruit addition during fermentation? Just because Good luck trying to figure out an alpha acid.
Right,
Look
yeah.
at the bittering content and an acid. And they're like, don't do that. I'm like, okay, fair enough.
You're like, too late.
So you're one of those guys that follows the rules, but you just don't think any of the rules really apply to you. It's just
Yeah, nailed it.
I get it. I know how that works, man.
Yeah, the whole program's nuts. So it's funny because our brewery is much more focused on wild fermentation and saisons. If we could just do saisons all the time, it'd be a blast.
Right.
Love that style. It's so
Yeah.
much fun to make.
Yeah.
We're not a hop forward brewery, but we do beers that are hop focused. We go 100% Maris Otter, which is a floor malted malt from Warminster in England. We use that, and it basically gives you a platform where if you screw up, it shows 100%.
Yeah.
So it makes it more complicated, and you have to make a point with your beer. So I'm still not quite sure how we got into this whole HPC thing, because we're not like a IPA brewery.
Mm-hmm.
But our IPAs that we put out really have a point to them where it's like, oh, this person really knew it. Like, they wanted to make this particular part of this hop shine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, we're having a lot of fun with that.
But on the same scale, though, when you're brewing saisons, if you're brewing them in like the colder months, where you're not going to get those crazy high saison temps, you're normally going to get, that hop profile is really what's going to hold the beer together. So
To a certain extent,
I mean,
or you can just overpitch and let it free rise.
yeah,
And there's so many different theories, and there's so many different research projects with how these things work, and there's so many things that criticize how you do a certain like process.
yeah,
But the bottom line is at the end of the day, is the product something that people love to drink, and is it good?
right,
And I think us as brewers, it's really our responsibility to make sure that what we're producing is something that we want to drink and that it's good. So as long as we keep that level of integrity with the product that we're making, should be fine.
yeah,
You can do something like we just did a Schwartz beer that was 6.2%. Lagered it 7.5 weeks. Wonderful. When you look at the style characteristics, 6.2 is not really something that should be with a Schwartz beer.
right,
But when you're looking at late December and going into early January, and it's 8 degrees outside, a 6.2% Schwartz beer, and you're using some midnight wheat to thicken the mouthfeel on it,
yeah,
is a gorgeous beer to drink.
right,
And you ran by all the process, I guess, the things that you need to do to create that particular beer. It's just a little unconventional, and I guess us as a brewery are completely comfortable with being unconventional with certain styles.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, is it good, and do people like it?
Well, so far it seems like they like it. I mean,
Yeah,
even though you're brewing beers that are way outside the box and something that a lot of people haven't already seen, obviously they're liking it. I mean, they're buying it.
It seems that way. We're running at 97% capacity, which means when we empty a tank, we fill it within 2 hours.
Jesus.
And what dictates our schedule and everything that we do with it, it's like when a beer is ready and it's moving, we have a brew day set and we're going.
And all of that without having a tap room.
Yep.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, that's
It's a model that it's a model that I've never heard of.
Yeah.
Sean, help yourself to beer, dude. You don't have to be shy. And jump in if you want. Grab a chair. So
yeah, it is literally the most ass backwards way to get a brewery going.
yeah.
Yeah, because you're like, okay, I'm going to open a tap room, get, some sales from that, then eventually start canning and distributing. You guys are like, oh, we're just going to distribute.
Right.
And then
No.
maybe open a tap room later.
And now we're getting 60 barrel fermenters,
Yeah.
getting the canning line, and it's like we should get a tap room.
Well, if you get a tap room, I mean, is 60 barrels going to keep up with that?
Oh,
I mean,
He doesn't know yet.
Because right now you're running at
He also-
97% capacity. So, I mean, it's,
Yeah, but we're on such a small scale. It's like,
yeah,
in just distributing, it's like, what are you guys doing?
yeah, yeah.
Yep.
I don't. It's a crazy model. It's not anything that you really see. We have a brewery here that did something kind of similar on for 3 years. They Soul Squared Brewing. They do farmhouse style ales.
Sweet.
And they did the same thing. They kind of just they bottled their beer and just kind of sold it here and there. Nowhere near the scale that you guys are doing it at. But, then they opened a tap room and now they're kind of struggling a little bit. So I'm not jinxing you by any means. I don't think that's going to be an issue.
I totally understand.
But I mean, it's something that I think with them where they did so well was because there was this limited thing. It was if you can find their bottles, that's fantastic. Yeah. But you're in tap rooms and all kinds of other things, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're not even bottling at this point, so it's
yeah. It's a crazy. I mean, it's and you don't make core beers. None of your beers are really the same. Probably the one that's closest to being the same would be when you put a tree in it.
A tree beer. Sounds
even though it's not ever the same
tree.
tree, and it's
always different processes.
Yeah.
But it's
yeah.
I guess similar between batches.
Walk me through the process of making a tree beer. I mean,
Cool, so,
where does it start?
Well,
Obviously with a tree, right? Or a little seedling.
all this stuff. It's really funny. Well, we build our recipes the morning of a brew, so we could have an idea that we're supposed to do a certain beer. It's we're gonna make X beer. Then the next morning you walk in and it's you know what? Everything about today feels this way, so I think that should probably dictate what we're doing more than trying to control just the atmosphere, because a lot of this stuff isn't about the recipe. It's about what you put into it. And if any of that's off, I'm not some hippy dippy douchebag that's gonna try to dictate what I'm doing off of what the wind is saying or whatever.
Yeah,
but
clearly you're a
if you walk
strict
in,
businessman. I mean,
you
showed up wearing a suit.
I'm not in a taco outfit, so it's all good. I think it's a suit. Yeah,
Hey,
yeah. No one can see me right now. I love this. Yeah, but it's really amazing. Basically, you can come in with, or at least we can come in and go in with the full intention of doing a beer. And man, if the night was shitty, or the morning was bad, or the morning was amazing and it just changed it, or you heard the right song and you're like, you know what? This is going to affect what we can do. We'll adjust everything and do it.
Yeah.
And execute it. And it's all about execution at that point. And as long as fundamentally you have the right idea with what it is that you're creating, and you really understand the product that you're making, there's really not that much room for a disaster when you're going with what is right at that point.
Yeah.
And I think what a lot of brewers screw up on is they try to control everything.
Mm-hmm.
I completely disagree with that mentality. It's easy to do that. You can adjust your water, you can adjust your pH, everything. Your strike, you obviously need to know your strike temps. You need to know what conversions you're getting. You need to know how to adjust every single thing that you're doing. But to not have flexibility based on the beer that you're making, because you're trying to control everything to a finite point,
Yeah.
you end up trying to. It's the most simple thing in the world at that point, which loses all the love.
Mm-hmm.
I think the recipes that you make, if you go from a different perspective and you really go from an angle of adjusting to what it is that the beer wants to do, you come out with something beautiful in the end. If you talk to someone like Peter Boucard, I guarantee he's one of the only other people that's going to agree with me on that. You talk to someone, Paul Arney, from Ale Apothecary. You talk to Jeff from Jester King. You talk to all these guys. I talk to them a lot, and we all have the same mentality towards this stuff. And it's, you're working with an animal there. And there's been points where I've had a fermenter not working correctly, and I've gone out and played music for it and just hung out with it. And just hung out.
You played,
just to let it go.
Played music for your your beer.
Yeah. Literally.
I believe it, because on the drive over here, he was telling me about how he's got musical instruments attached to every piece of equipment in the brewing process.
We're doing that, yeah. That's rad. But all that stuff, I mean, it's a living organism. Why not treat it that way?
Right?
It's really simple. I don't know.
Dude, I get it. I don't know that I understand it, but I get what you're saying, and it does make me think from a different perspective as a home brewer, because that's something that I've practiced as a home brewer, is how do I control my environment?
Sure.
How do I control what I want to get this beer to do?
I've always thought it's better to adjust a recipe to an environment rather than an environment to a recipe. I've
never come at it from that angle. I really haven't. You did just blow that. I got little brain bits on the inside of my hat right now.
No, I mean, there's so many different directions to go with.
Let's go brew right now. Let me show you my environment.
We should make a beer, guys. I'm totally down if you guys are in.
We got a tree out front. I got a chainsaw.
I have been wanting that tree to come down for quite some time.
We got sponsored by Still, so watch this.
And that's an interesting, you brought that up. It was interesting to hear you talk about how, Still gave you a nice, clean, brand new chainsaw to do your thing with, because I never connected it until you told me about it, where you got chainsaw oil, you got all these things that will totally fuck a beer.
Yeah.
So, I mean...
So I was super adamant when I first started doing tree beers. That was, 4 or 5 years ago.
Just 4 or 5 years
ago. I was...
We are so behind the times. We're just now learning about this now. And he's like, dude, I was doing this 4 or 5 years ago. What are you talking about?
Well, no, I was crazy about it. I used to use a hammer and chisel out all the trees. And the reason why I do that is because I was worried about output from if I was using a chainsaw.
Yeah.
And then about 6 trees into that, I was like, man, that's a lot of months of work, and it's really not that necessary. So I grabbed a electric chainsaw, and I ran it with canola oil with the idea of, sweet, canola oil, it's going to be high heat. It'll work well on your saw, and everything's food grade.
Right.
And yeah, it's really funny, sort of the steps that got there. Like, it was like, should I use like all the different oils that you can possibly use that are gonna stay food grade. And I boiled it down to canola. The other one was not shortening. It was I've used it on a few machines. I'm not thinking of what kind of oil it was, but anyways, I was really worried about gas output. After I got the Still chainsaw, and I'm doing this with the gas chainsaw, and you have so much more power, and you got the engine facing up where it's blowing out and you're not getting anything on your tree.
Right.
I realize how much of an idiot I've been for the last 5 years. Like, basically, it's almost, I hope the brewery is as successful as this process has been. Like, started so backwards. By the time I get to the Still chainsaw, it's like, sweet, this is awesome.
I made it.
So did Still come to you and they're like, dude, you're doing this all wrong? Like,
no, I came to them. It's pretty funny, when we were coming down here for one of the collaborations for Collab Fest this week, I was like, you know what? We can pitch this to someone like Still, who's a great company who makes good tools.
Yeah.
And I pitched it to him in a way that was like, you look at the Marlboro, man, and how Marlboro cigarettes marketed a lifestyle, and it has nothing to do with smoking cigarettes.
Right. Yeah.
So when I shot the email, it was, cigarettes are out. There's something that's got to come in, And we can rebrand the Marlboro Man with a brewery if we do this correctly with a chainsaw company. and it completely worked out. I still don't know how it worked. Yeah. It's pretty rad.
But bottom line is now you're sponsored by Still.
Yeah, now we got crazy. Like tomorrow at Clap Fest, I'm going to run around with a Still cape on.
I thought for a second he was going to say a chainsaw, and I was like, whoa.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that
They
too.
allow those.
I don't think Still would like that much.
Hey there, bearded beer geeks. Does your beard need a little TLC? Is it out of control and itchy? Then you need to oil that sucker up with beard oil from Beerds by Nick. Spelled Beerds, Beerds by Nick is made with all natural ingredients like argan, jojoba, sweet almond, avocado, and vitamin E oils. Choose from scents like Good Morning Wood, Good Night Beard, and Invigo Great. All with great aromas that the ladies will love. Created by a brewer of beer right here in northern Colorado, every batch is handmade to order and ships worldwide. Visit facebook.com Beards by Nick to place your order today. While you're there, check out the new Beard Balm and handcrafted bourbon barrel stave bottle openers, the official bottle opener of the Hopheads Guide podcast. For a limited time, get 10% off your order by using promo code GalaxyHops at checkout. Go to facebook.com/Beards by Nick or visit www.hopheadsguide.com/deals and get oiled up.
We were talking about, what were we talking about?
Chainsaw oil. And
Yeah, the chainsaws, and how you ended up with a
6 years later, you're like, yes, now I figured out the easiest way to do something.
and the process of actually brewing a tree beer.
Sure. So once you chop the tree down and you do gut that thing out, regardless of what your style is on that.
So you have to go hunting for the
Yeah.
tree, and then you gut the tree.
Yeah, what I
Makes
found
sense.
is you look at the top and you look at how healthy the needles are at the very top, regardless of the temperature outside, and you get better utilization of the sap inside it.
Right.
And I'm no arborist, but I cut a lot of trees down. A lot of beers.
I'm not an arborist, but fuck trees.
But I'll reuse them all the time. So anyway, basically looping through the tree with high heat, you're gonna extract a lot more of the sap content, the flavor profile off of that wood, and it's just a really cool method that we came up with. I'm not sure who else has done it, if anyone has, because when you go historically, there's people that have used trees. You got the people in Finland, you got the Norwegian beers, but not a lot of people in the last 1,000 years had pumps that they could pump things back into their brew kettle with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just a really neat process. We're getting some really cool flavors out of it. So basically, we'll rip the center out, loop the beer through it, out of the boil kettle from the whirlpool arm, down the tree into a grant, and loop back into a pump to the bottom of the kettle, and just keep a continuous loop going until everything out of that whirlpool arm tastes like it has the right pitch content.
Yeah.
It just it's a really cool process.
And it's just flavor. Like, you're just constantly tasting it the whole way you go.
All
and,
of it.
And when you get that I mean, is it a dankness?
No, I think
That
it's,
you get
it's
from
more.
it, or-
It's more when you taste something and you're inspired by it.
Okay.
That's what I call it. It's like,
Yeah. You feel like you don't need to sing to it.
Yeah.
You're good.
it's like, well,
When it's singing to you.
this made its point to me, so you win.
So have you ever gone into the trees like, like the hills are alive type thing and just kind of like talked to the trees and figured out, or sung to the trees to figure
So
out which
I
one
haven't
exactly
done
wants
too
to be
many hallucinogenics.
harvested?
No, what I do is I take my steel chainsaw and chop everything down and think about it later.
The one that falls last is the one that gets used.
You lose, sucker.
See, you have this like very interesting mix between hippie and fuck you that I really enjoy, because
Nice.
I live with a hippie, and I'm usually the fuck you. So it's like us combined, really, is what
So
it
I'm your
is.
kid, is what you're saying.
Oh, you're screwed.
This is my future right here.
This is gonna be interesting.
Oh man.
I would have a response, but if I put the nail on the head.
It's scary. It's like looking into a crystal ball and going, oh fuck.
You thought he had like some scientific method. He goes out and checks everything. No, it's more like meeny, miny, mo.
No, it's even more stupid than that. Like, I'll go out and I'll look at trees and I'll be like, huh. Like, those branches up there look really good. And then
It's
I'll
just
be like,
the branches
well,
at the top.
well, yeah, look at it. And then, like, chip off a little bit of the bark on the bottom and smell it. It's like, yeah, that seems like a good pitch content. Done.
I love it. It's it's amazing. It really is.
It's really scientific. It's one of the senses.
So on the farm you're gonna have hops, you're gonna have grains,
Yep.
and I mean, is there anything else that you just kind of picture for the farm that you think just needs to be in a beer that you're eventually gonna grow there? Or,
Well, I mean, we've done a lot of mushroom beers over the last. We've done a few mushroom beers over the last couple of years, but I've done a lot of mushroom beers.
yeah, I sure.
Gotten forge a mushroom and figure out how to utilize it and build a recipe around it. And I really think that's a pretty cool component to add. Like, it's such a cool flavor, and where that came from, I did a really crazy project about 7 years ago in Berkeley, California, where I took one block in Berkeley. And the idea was, can I make a beer off of one block in Berkeley, California, outside of the grain?
Wow.
So all the hops, I cultivated a sourdough bread yeast and used that as a pitch, and added a bunch of plums off of a neighbor's tree that I smashed in the fermenters and fermented on.
Does the neighbor know that you use these plums?
Yeah, I asked it. It was rad. The yeast.
He did when I cut down his tree.
most of the yeast that we got on that beer was off the plums on the outside.
Yeah.
Just a really crazy project, and I think that's where the idea of, like, man, it'd be really cool to do full estate beers
Yeah. So is there a cool ship in the mix here?
Two.
You have two cool ships.
coming in. Yeah.
Oh,
One of them-
okay. You
one of them
haven't
is
built.
going
You don't
in.
have one yet.
So I was in the middle of building them, and the guy that I built all the tanks with deceased.
I'm sorry to hear that. That's
Yeah,
terrible.
It happens. That was last year.
I didn't realize that.
Well,
Now I understand the circle of life.
yeah.
Thank you, Mike. I mean, I'm sorry to
Lion
hear
King
that
is
you lost
great.
your friend. I'm sorry to hear that you lost your friend, though. I mean, that's terrible.
So,
Tried to
Simba,
get serious there for a second.
So, Simba, when you look out over this hill, Look at all that yeast and trees. No.
Everybody loves a good yeasty tree.
One of the cool ships is going in a horse trailer that I'm converting with a retractable ceiling.
Oh, that sounds like a fantastic idea.
I got a top that can snap on top of it so I can drive it out anywhere.
That's actually really cool.
Swap
Yeah.
out the ceiling panels and previously inoculate them however I want. Drive
So-
out, retract the roof so that you have lower steam content
Right.
or higher steam content depending on where the level is to inoculate the beer as it's dropping down.
Okay.
And a lot of these theories come from Cantillon,
Yeah.
where it's all what's in the ceiling rather than what's in the air.
Right.
And I took that theory and ran with it insanely. So
Yeah.
I started building these things and going crazy with it. And the initial move on it was I was taking old dilapidated barns that had been around for 100 years,
Yeah.
and chopping either siding or roofing panels off of them and building a structure over something that is cool shipping where the steam is hitting those to see if it would inoculate different.
Yeah.
And I got different results on all of them. I was like, sweet. I really like where this is going. So I kind of I morphed that whole mentality into there might be a way to control, like, to a certain extent with completely wild spontaneous fermentation and help it in a certain
Right.
direction and just feed it the right things that it wants. So now at this point, and again, I wouldn't recommend this for anyone because it's pretty delusional, but
But hey, it's worked for me so far.
And
If
we're
I-
supposed to be an educational podcast.
if I taste a beer like from Detar or something, I really like the flavor on it, and I know that it's not pasteurized and it's something you can work with, I'll take 3 or 4 of those beers and I'll hit panels with those that I can use over a cool ship strictly to help microbes work in a certain direction. You still have your spontaneous fermentation, you still have every spontaneous factor happening in there,
Right.
but the predominant in the beauty of our name, the Hidden Mother, you don't really have control over that. But that mother yeast that beer picks up dictates the beer completely. And that's where, like, the puzzle piece for me is, like, it's a constant playing around and adjusting to what the beer is doing and understanding that the beer is wearing the pants in the relationship and you're not really controlling it, you're cultivating it. But a lot of these projects are really focused on that. I don't know. Did that make any sense?
Yeah. Every time I think that he's lost me, he reels me back in. It's just, it's amazing.
It's like insane.
I mean, but it makes sense.
That's it,
though,
exactly.
doesn't
It really
Like,
does. I mean, it's kind of crazy that when you consider that in any beer, whether it's spontaneous or not, or controlled as you kind of describe it, that's really what it's all about. Is that mother yeast is the one that's going to control everything. So, the one question I have about this horse trailer idea is, I mean, what's the TTB think of this idea? Is this going to actually fly? Because aren't you technically supposed to, like, once it's wort, but
So
once you
not to-
add yeast,
not-
it becomes beer, and doesn't it have to stay, like, within its environment?
So not to go back to my favorite president.
he didn't invent the
He did.
TTB.
He did shut down. He shut down the TTB. So I'm just depending on him now.
Come on.
No, that's a fair question, but usually when you get a cool shit beer or you get something that's doing a spontaneous fermentation, by the time you move those things into a barrel, you haven't had enough of a gravity change where it's even detectable.
No
for
actual
anyone.
fermentation is
Yeah.
really has actually.
I mean,
happened.
it's kind of like if you're making a bread starter.
Right. Yeah.
You don't really know until you're cultivating it.
Yeah.
And,
So really, you're transporting the yeast. It's just taking the long way to get to the fermenter.
You're looking at microflora wherever you're landing and trying to capture a certain yeast, ideally, if God wills it, I guess.
You're gonna at least hose out the horse trailer first, right?
Too late.
I mean,
Too late.
Brettanomyces.
I mean,
it's a great horse blanket flavor.
People love a good horse blanket, but man,
no, it's I mean, it's a valid question, but I think something like this is so far out there that I don't think anyone knows how to regulate it. Like,
nor would they try. They're like, I'm not going anywhere near that guy.
Yeah. Every time I ask him a question, he asks me a question.
What do you mean? What do I mean?
Yeah. So wait. What you're saying is clarify it in different words. Yeah.
So really, I mean, if we were to wrap it up, the future of the Hidden Mother is
a horse trailer.
Well, it's not just a horse trailer. The possibilities are endless because I mean, your brain is going, man. I mean, you got a lot that you envision for this place.
Yeah, I
mean, what's the end game? What do you?
I know I'm stuck in this for life. Like I'm not gonna get out of it, and I don't want to get out of it. I love it.
Yeah.
And a lot of what I'm doing with this project is unconventional as it is. I've spent so much time looking at kind of how people do things, and
yeah,
it needs to be done different. So many people don't do it the right way.
Yeah.
And so many people are trying to run after whatever the new fad is. Like, you look at these breweries that pop up that do a bunch of hazies because that's hot right now. What are they going to do in 4 years when it's not?
Right.
Or 2 years when it's not?
They're going to buy horse trailers. What they're going to do?
They should. Yeah. So I'm opening a horse trailer business.
This is the end game.
Yeah.
The cool ship horse trailer business brought to you by Still.
Exactly. Nailed it.
I
don't have anything to say at this point. Like,
it's like, does Still make horse trailers?
Well, one of the things I've noticed, you don't ever really refer to it as a brewery. You refer to it as a project. Numerous times I've heard you refer to it as a project. And so it to me,
I've never noticed that, but I think that's really true.
That tells me that it's not like you don't see this as a business or a living. To me, it's like you're an artist that is like, this is the piece that I'm working on now.
Yeah. If I think you couldn't hit it.
Yeah.
Better than that.
I'm very intuitive.
Well,
and modest.
Well, and with that, it's I take this stuff really seriously, and I'm not reckless with it. Like, the things that I'm doing are extremely calculated. It's a calculated crazy. Fair enough. And yeah, it's a brewery, but I feel like all a brewery is a platform to do what it is that should be done. So I really do think art is like a better word for it, because it's when you get me and the people that I really appreciate and get along with in a room, we're pretty much the most dysfunctional people in the world, because that's 100% what we run off, and there's no business sense. Like, see, you need to surround yourself with people that are going to help you with that.
Right.
This project, because I went such a long route on it, I avoided all the business side of it and really created a really artistic platform with it. It's the only thing I care about.
I have to agree. I mean, it's
and I don't think this is the first one I'm gonna like. There's gonna be more things that come out of this place that are like, like, where did that come from?
That are not just the brewery. It's going to be.
I think it's just
an evolution.
It's just gonna keep evolving.
Yeah.
I think
agree with that.
I'm gonna be in the brewing world for probably 45 more years,
I hope so.
roughly.
Yeah. Dude,
And then
I just
probably
giving
go.
to me.
I'll go back to music.
You'll get tired of singing to your fermenters at some point.
Yeah. You gotta do like
I hope American Idol is still
thrash,
around at then.
thrash metal at 75.
I've seen some of your IDs, and I can only imagine that, like, when you're
Those are bad,
75, when your 75-year-old ID comes in,
I love it. I love it right now. If I'm gonna go out in Fort Collins, I need to show people my phone and my business card and be like, "That's me."
I promise this is me.
You're not him. I have his phone.
It
Look at
looks
his
like,
business card.
see,
It works beautifully.
Yeah.
Well,
Brad.
it has been an absolute pleasure getting to know you, and I love the fact that you think completely different than any brewer that I've ever met. I love that. I really do, because it tells me that there's still hope for the industry, that we're not going to live in this commercial world of drinking hazy IPAs and pastry stouts.
I was just
forever.
gonna say, I'm really happy that someone else hates it as much as I do.
I mean, it's comforting, because I mean, one of my biggest things that I get on a soapbox about is the fact that everybody wants to make a pastry IPA, and or a pastry stout, and I don't. Why can't we just make a stout that tastes like a stout? And the fact that you don't want to make a beer that tastes like a beer at all, or at least appreciate what the beer is going to do. I like it. I enjoy it. I think.
Well, the funniest thing about our brewery, and I think one of the things that we're notoriously known for, is all the beers that we make are extremely clean.
Right.
Like, they're just super clean beers. Every single beer has a point. Like, if we put a beer out, if we're doing adjuncts or we're doing something crazy with the process, when you go to the base beer, every style like that we do hits the style standpoint, or I guess the profiles that you'd expect if you were judging that style.
Yeah.
And then you just have different variants on it. But the most important thing is to make a beer first, rather than something that is going to sell to the masses because it's, like these smoothie IPAs or whatever they like. It's ridiculous. Like,
Yeah.
why not just make a milkshake,
Right.
and add some vodka to it? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. Like, make a beer and go from there.
Yeah. I'm with you there, man.
Yeah.
100%. What else do we need to know? What else do we need to know about Hidden Mother before we wrap it up?
Uh-oh. It's going to be
And
another hour long.
the wheels just started to turn. I mean,
Oh man, I wish everyone could see Collab Fest tomorrow. I know what's gonna happen.
Collab Fest is going to be exciting.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm excited to try the beers that you collaborated on.
Same here.
And
Me too.
it's like you left your kids with somebody else, and you got to figure out whether or not
I do
you
it.
screwed them up.
I do that all the time with my kids. Brad. It's called school.
Yeah. Mike, thanks for joining us, man. This has been probably one of the funnest podcasts we've ever done. And like I said, it's been great getting to know you and hearing about your project.
Thank you so much for hosting, and anyone out there, if you're ever in the Spokane area, hit up the Hidden Mother, or if you guys are out there, if you don't hit me up,
Oh,
I'm
we're
gonna
coming.
slap
We're
you.
coming to see you. We're gonna bring tents, and we're staying on the farm.
Yeah, should be right. It's a crazy place. But
I want to see it, man.
Crazy beautiful. One of the things I was hoping to do this year was take a 40-foot shipping container and dig it into the hill right behind the brewery, so I have a cave so I can read bottles correctly. Where I can go out and basically spin the bottles as a bottle of conditioning underground because it's basically a cave.
Yeah.
And doing that whole project. But I don't think it's going to happen this year because of the expansion, but that's coming.
Okay, I want to see it.
And here's the cave.
A man-made
Just
cave.
a 40-foot shipping container. Like, reinforce it.
Yeah.
Rad.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't got
Nothing
a fucking cave.
Nothing not awesome about that.
and I'm guessing in Washington that's completely normal because I'm sure there's a lot of like
Bomb shelters.
bomb shelters.
Check out my guns. Don't take my guns. That's Idaho.
Oh man. Thanks again, Mike. Everybody check out Hidden Mother if you ever get the opportunity. And if you're going, well, by the time this interview is done, Collaboration Fest is done. So you've missed out on at least 2 fantastic beers that you collaborated on. So
I think they'll be available at Woods Boss and Mockery and
On
Jagged
tap.
Mountain. So 3
Yeah.
places.
all right. So you can
Yeah.
at least go to Woods Boss Jagged Mountain to try the Quebec that you did with them.
Yep.
And then the one that you did at Mockery was a what was that one?
That was a Sahati.
So yeah, go check them out. And
We use that with the Norwegian bread yeast.
did you just throw some Norwegian bread in there at it? Or?
Yeah, pretty much. It was
That's like around. No, that's what
Yeah, that's,
You want to go bread?
I've heard of guys using sourdough the same way. They use like a sourdough yeast and they just throw the bread in and
I mean,
Let
all
it-
of its ratios. You just got to figure out your ratios.
that's math. We don't do math on this show.
I don't either.
Thanks, man.
Cool.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
So much fun.